Oneness. 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 Coexistence simply means openness in faith and dimension. The perception when I will do in our national community. What I say. But yeah, someone said the other way, the nation of we are in the Easter festivities. Say that this is soon after. And the Yakasa Christ is also every. This is written in the Bible, in the Gospel. But in the another account of the crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus the Christ in the apparent gospel of Jesus the Christ. The name of the book is Apparent Gospel of Jesus the Christ. There are some books that find the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus the Christ. Young kind is the chapter is chapter 171 and chapter 172 of Apparent Gospel of Jesus the Christ. Because if I can be the old seal on copy, not on kind and come on. We shall also post it on social media, Facebook, not to be happy. Concluding scenes of the resurrection of the crucifixion. Joseph and Nicodemus, by consent of Pilate, take the body of Jesus from the cross and lay it in Joseph's tomb. A guard of 100 Jewish soldiers are placed about the sepulchre. Apparent Gospel chapter 171 verse 1. Now, at the 6th hour of the day, although the sun was at its height, the day became as dark as night. And men sought lanterns, and they built fires upon the hills, that they might see. And when the sun refused to shine, and darkness came, the Lord exclaimed, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, Thou son, why hast thou forsaken me? Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, Thou son, why hast thou forsaken me? The Son is S-U-N. The people did not understand the words he spoke. They thought he spoke the name Elijah. And they said, he calls upon Elijah in his hour of need. Now we will see if he will come. And Jesus said, I thirst. A Roman soldier dipped a sponge in vinegar and myrrh and placed it to his lips. He dipped a sponge in vinegar and myrrh and placed it on his lips. Now at the 9th hour of the day, the earth began to quake. And then in the darkness of that sunless day, a flood of golden light appeared above the cross. And from the light, a voice was heard, which said, Lo, it is done. And Jesus said, My Father God, into thy hands I give my soul. A Roman soldier in compassion said, This agony is all too great. Relief shall come. And with a spear, he pierced his heart, and it was done. The Son of Man was dead. And then the earth was shook again. The city of Jerusalem rocked to and fro. The hills were rent, and tombs were opened up. And people thought they saw the dead arise and walk the streets. the temple quivered, and the veil between the sanctuary and the holy place was rent in twain, and consternation reigned through all the place. The Roman guard who watched the body on the cross exclaimed, "This surely was the Son of God who died." And then the people hurried down from Calvary. The priests, the Pharisees, and scribes were filled with fear. They sought the cover of their synagogues and homes and said, "Behold, the wrath of God." The great day of the Jewish Pasch was near, and Jews could not by law permit a criminal to hang upon the cross upon the Sabbath day. And so they prayed that Pilate would remove the bodies of the men that had been crucified. And Pilate sent his guards to Calvary to note if all the men were dead. And when the guards were gone, two aged Jews came to the palace door to see the governor, and they were members of the highest council of the Jews. Yet they believed that Jesus was a prophet sent from God. The one was Rabbi Joseph, the Arimathean counselor, and he was just and loved the law of God. And Nicodemus was the other one who came. These men fell down at Pilate's feet and prayed that they might take the body of the Nazarene and lay it in a tomb. And Pilate gave consent. Now Joseph had prepared a costly mixture to embalm the body of the Lord, about 100 pounds of aloes and of myrrh. And this we took and hastened out to Calvary. And when the guards returned, they said, "The Nazarene is dead." The male baptists are alive. And Pilate told the guards to go and smite the living men so they would die. And then they gave their bodies to the flames, but give the body of the Nazarene to rabbis who would call for it. The soldiers did as Pilate said. The rabbis came and took away the body of the Lord, and when they had prepared it with the spices they had brought, they laid it in the new made tomb that had been made for Joseph in a solid rock. And then they nailed a stone up to the sepulchre. The priests were fearful lest the friends of Jesus would go forth at night and take away the body of the Nazarene, and then report that he had risen from the dead, as he had said. And they requested that the governor would send his soldiers into the room to guard the body of the dead. But Pilate said, "I will not send a Roman guard, but you have Jewish soldiers." And they sent 100 men to the centurion to guard the tomb. And then they sent 100 soldiers out to guard the tomb. Apparent Gospel chapter 172. Pilate placed, okay, let me go to verse 1. The tomb in which they laid the body of the Lord, was in a garden, great with flowers, the garden of Siloam, and Joseph's home was near. Before the watch began, Caiaphas, sent a company of priests out to the garden of Siloam, that he might be assured that Jesus' body was within the tomb. They rolled away the stone. They saw the body there, and then they placed the stone again before the door. And Pilate sent his scribe, who placed upon the stone the seal of Rome, in such a way that he who moved the stone would break the seal. To break this Roman seal meant death to him who broke the seal. The Jewish soldiers all were sworn to faithfulness, and then the watch began. At midnight, all was well, but suddenly the tomb became a blaze of light, and dawn, and dawn what? A troop of white-clad soldiers, okay? Okay. They came up to the tomb and marched and counter-marched before the door. The Jewish soldiers were alert. They thought their friends had come to steal the body of the Nazarene. The captain of the guard cried out to charge. They charged, but not a white-clad soldier fell. They did not even stop. They marched and counter-marched among the frightened men. They stood upon the Roman seal. They did not speak. They unhit not their swords. It was the silent brotherhood. The Jewish soldiers fled in fear. They fell upon the ground. They stood apart until the white-clad soldiers marched away, and then the light about the tomb grew dim. Then they returned. The stone was in its place, and the seal was not disturbed, and they returned their watch. Now Jesus did not sleep in the tomb. The body is the manifest of soul, but soul is soul without its manifest. And in the realm of soul's manifest, the Lord went forth and taught. He opened up the prison door and set the prisoners free. He broke the chains of captive souls and led the captives to the light. He sat in council with the patriarchs and prophets of the olden times, the masters of all times and clients he met. And in the great assemblies, he stood forth and told the story of his life on earth, and of his death in sacrifice for men, and of his promises to clothe himself again in garb of flesh and walk with his disciples, just to prove the possibilities of man, just to prove that certain things are possible for man, to give to them the key of life, of death, and of the resurrection of the dead. In council, all the masters sat and talked about the revelations of the coming age. When she, the Holy Bread, shall fill the earth and air with holy bread, and open up the way of man to perfectness and endless life. The garden of Siloam was silent on the Sabbath day. The Jewish soldiers watched, and no one else approached the tomb. But on the following night, the scene was changed. At midnight, every Jewish soldier heard a voice which said, "Adon Masich Kumi, which means Lord Christ arise. Adon Mashis Kumi, which means Lord Christ arise. At midnight, every Jewish soldier heard a voice which said, Adon Mashis Kumi, which means Lord Christ arise. And they surpassed again that friends of Jesus were alert, were coming up to take the body of their Lord away. The soldiers were alert with swords or ships and drawn, and then they heard the words again. It seems as though the voice was everywhere, and yet they saw no man. The soldiers, blanched with fear, and still to flee meant for cowardice, and so they stood and watched. Let me read verse 30 again. The soldiers, blanched with fear, it means they were filled with fear, and still to flee meant death for cowardice. What it means is when they run away, it means they are cowards, and so they will be killed. And so they stood and watched. Who forced you? Again, this was just before the sun arose. The heavens blazed with fire, with light. A distant thunder seemed to herald forth a coming storm. And then the earth began to quake, and in the rays of light, they saw a form descend from heaven. They said, Behold, an angel comes. And that they heard again, Adam Machid Kum. And then the white robed form tramped on the Roman seal. And then he tore it into shreds. He took the mighty stone in hand, as though it were a pebble, from the brook, and cast it to the side. And Jesus opened up his eyes and said, All hail the rising sun, the coming of the day of righteousness. And Jesus opened up his eyes, being still in the sepulchre, and said, All hail the rising sun, the coming of the day of righteousness. And then he folded up his burial gown, his head, hands, and his coverings, and laid them all aside. He rose and for a moment stood beside the white robed form. The weaker soldiers fell before the ground and had their faces in their hands. The stronger stood and watched. They saw the body of the Nazarene transmute. They saw it change from mortal to immortal form, and then it disappeared. The soldiers heard a voice from somewhere. Yeah, from everywhere. It said, Peace, peace on earth, goodwill to men. They looked, the tomb was empty, and the Lord has risen, as he said. The soldiers hastened to Jerusalem, and the priest and said, Behold, the Nazarene has risen, as he said. The tomb is empty, and the body of the man is gone. We know not where it is. And they told about the wonders of the night. Caiaphas called the council of the Jews. He said, the news must not go forth that Jesus has risen from the dead. Caiaphas called the council of the Jews. He said, the news must not go forth that Jesus has risen from the dead. You see how secrets were hidden from us. For if it does, all men will say, He is the Son of God, and all our testimonies will be proven false. And then they called the 100 soldiers in and said to them, you know not where the body of the Nazarene is resting now. So if you will go forth and say that the disciples came and stole the body while you slept, each of you shall have a silver piece, and you make it right with Pilate for breaking of the Roman seal. You understand? The soldiers did as they were paid to do so. Bribery and corruption from it. Adam, Message, Kumi, Lord Christ, arise. Amen.